Okay, so welcome, Sally, to this session. Nice to have you here. And you had something to share.
Yeah, when I came off the call yesterday, while I was on the call, I just knew I needed some time out, some quiet time. So I came off the call, and in the quiet space, I brought up some anger and kind of ragefulness feeling. And I realized I'd felt the same a few years ago. And I obviously hadn't let it go, whatever it was. So I got another opportunity to deal with it yesterday afternoon. And so I went out for a walk, and I walked through the feelings and I let them go. And I came back feeling really empty and peaceful, and no thoughts. And I could feel movement inside me. It was just really interesting. Some moments I felt nothing, and sometimes I observed that I was feeling empty. And it was a stillness, a nothingness, definitely a shift.
Mm-hmm.
And then that went on for the rest of the day. And then when I went to bed, I could feel this interesting movement inside that I'd not noticed before. And I just laid in bed and I didn't sleep, and I just stayed in this state, not intentionally, just did. And it was not a feeling of anything, which is new to me. There was no body sensations, no thoughts. Just occasionally I noticed there was no thoughts, no sensations. And it lasted a long time, it seemed. Who knows how long it lasted, but it seemed a long, long, long time to keep coming in and out of that. And then eventually I went to sleep. And when I woke up, I had this very clear choice if to think or not. And when I chose not to think, I didn't need to breathe. And I found that very interesting. Mm-hmm. And then I went into another state, which was, I had all this dark, I know it's only my mind making up stories, but it was quite profound for me. I saw this dark energy, like matter, in front of me that was moving away from me, or I was moving backwards at kind of warp speed. It was really happening all smoothly, but kind of in a very large state. And we were parting company. This dark matter and me were parting company. It's hard to explain. They were in front of me. They appeared to be going away from me. I was going backwards, obviously in my mind. But it felt very profound. And the dark parts were light. It was like they were black, like coal, but they were shining on the outside, reflecting light. It just seemed beautiful. It was just absolutely beautiful. Rather than something to be removed or let go, it was something to be marveled at and enjoyed. It felt like a picture of the universe that I was able to look at as I moved away from it. I felt really peaceful. I felt really happy. It felt glorious. It felt like a lifting of a veil, entering freedom and expansion. And then I was in a really strong peace and lightness. And then I was in this vessel of light, really bright light. And this light got brighter and brighter. And then it kind of wanted to explode out of the light vessel, the container. I don't know if that was a symbol of my body. I don't know. But something held me in the light. And it was like I was in, I can only call it a vessel. I suppose if you were giving it a human state, you'd say like a spaceship, but it was more a vessel. It's something like my mind couldn't understand what the vessel was. And I still had this urge to break free out of it, or expand out of it. I didn't want to be in anything. And after a little while, this light container expanded inside, and I just laid in the light. And it felt very remarkable. And I can, when there's experiences where you can just think of it and you relive it again. So it wasn't like a dream. I was awake. And it's left me feeling very different. Something I can't really explain, but I feel very different, like something happened. I think when I let go of the anger and the rage, what happened was I was raging at ego and spirit and the battle between the two. And somehow I must have shifted something, because I was like, oh, my goodness sake, this can't go on. You know, it's like really angry. And something must have shifted then to then create this expansion, light, this peace. And even now I feel this, it's a really delicate feeling in me. Like I can really feel, but I don't feel anything. Like, to me, a feeling is like an emotion. There isn't an emotion there, but it's just a feeling of energy moving, I suppose. I just wanted to share it because it felt very profound. I know it sounds like a dream, but it wasn't. It was an experience, and yeah, it felt really special.
Well, thanks for sharing that. It's really inspiring to hear these kinds of stories and experiences. So that's what you'd call a mystic experience, what you had, which is, it's beyond the normal range of normal experience, taking you into altered states, visions. And interesting that you found a place where you're aware, but there's not really anything going on. That's exactly what we're talking about, pure formless awareness. It's awareness without any kind of thought or emotion, but you're aware that you're aware. And it feels very peaceful, very, lovely. So that's, ultimately where it leads to. Maybe the breaking out was wanting to just go to that, out of the kind of container of light, as beautiful as that is. It's like wanting to let go of it all and just go into pure formless awareness of perfect love. So it's all symbolic, and the mind's still symbolizing. There's still, talks about vision. Yeshua talks about vision, and all vision is still symbolic. So you're still in time and space. There's still perception. Even Christ's vision, as he says, which is the highest vision you can attain in this world, is just a symbol that will ultimately be undone and let go of, and the pure formless awareness that you touched on, you glimpsed, just replaces it. So I think that's, you almost had a mystic experience to show you the Holy Trinity in many ways. And you can interpret it, however you want. I don't think interpretation really does justice to these experiences, but if you want to interpret it, that might be one interpretation of what was being shown to you. Let me just bring up the Holy Spirit. Holy Trinity is what we want. So an operating system. So let me share my screen so you can have a look at this, see if this resonates at all. This diagram, let's just collapse the ribbon, shall we? Full screen mode, there we go. So Holy Spirit, Holy Trinity, an operating system for your life. So maybe in some way you experience some of this, in a non-intellectual way. This is very like, okay, well, here's the words and framed in shapes and so on. But that vehicle of light that you experienced, you could call your true self, or Christ, or the Buddha, or the Atman. It's like the holder temporarily, and it's beautiful. You can't say it's amazing. It's beautiful, but there's still like a container, a vessel, as you say. You can't really name it, but there's something there. So that could be interpreted as this true self. In some mystical teachings, spiritual teachings, they call it like the chariots of fire. Chariots of fire carrying you up. This kind of language. So you understand where it comes from now, because if you've had that kind of mystical experience and then you write it down, how do you describe it? It was like I was on a chariot of fire being carried up into heaven or something. So you can see where this imagery comes from. And then you experience some of this, just pure formless awareness of perfect love, just no emotion, but just a state of mind where you're completely empty, but very peaceful. And there's no need to move out of that state. You just rest in that state. So you experienced some of this Holy Trinity, Father, Source, the Son, this Christ, true self, which is the vehicle of light in which he traveled temporarily in time and space. And then Holy Spirit is perception. So you changed your mind about past experience, which seemed to happen in time. You let go of some rage, some anger that came up. So that's still dealing with illusions in the perceptual world of time and space that are held in your mind. And so you let them go, and then you open your mind to the Christ, to the experience of that, which connects you with the Father or the Source, that extends you, and then you have an experience of this pure formless awareness that lies beyond all of this. Beyond, certainly is way beyond perception. It's even beyond the highest vision, Christ's vision, as Yeshua calls it. It just is. What else can you say? It's the isness of being. It just is, and there's nothing much else you can't really describe it in positive terms. So that this could be a way of framing that experience. If it's helpful, then use it. If it's not, then don't worry, because an experience is really beyond words, and it's not meant to be explained in words. But it's something that's for you, that's there as you can feel. It's shifted you into another state of mind, where you become aware that you're just a state of mind. Actually, that's the truth of the matter. The thoughts and the emotions are like covers over the pure formless awareness that you really are. Did you see that? So I had a similar experience. I didn't have visions of light, although it was interesting because just before that, like an hour or two before I'd had that experience, I did have this experience of a light. It was like a golden orb that just kind of got given to me with a hand. This hand came out of nowhere and put it straight in my heart chakra. And so that was like a vision. I was like, okay. And I kind of felt something move, some energy move. Pretty briefly, it was maybe 30 seconds, a minute, I don't know. It was right at the end of a meditation. I'd been sitting for a couple of hours cross-legged in meditation in the hall to a Vipassana retreat. And then pretty much immediately after that, the bell rang for lunch. So, that broke the meditation. I was like, wow, that was pretty, like a hand coming out of nowhere, like the hand of God type idea, giving you this golden orb and putting it straight in your heart chakra. So it was like, that would be a vision of Christ, vision of this light given to you. And then that afternoon, a couple of hours later, I had this profound kind of mystical experience where I just went into the pure formless awareness for, as you say, you can't really say how long it is. Just stayed there for a little bit, came out of it, and then immediately the Holy Spirit, again the Holy Trinity was in operation, was interpreting it for me and saying, well, this is what you've done. You've covered over this pure formless awareness with all the thoughts and emotions that are really the veil of illusion, and the world is just a justification for those thoughts and emotions. And it was so clear. That insight was so clear. It was like, yeah, that's exactly how this works. And there's all this teaching I thought really just dropped in for me. I mean, wow, okay, I understand now why they call it the veil of illusion. And because it's just a cover over that awareness that I've cut. And I cried because I'd done it. I realized I'd done this. It was so clear that I'd done that. And so I guess it was total responsibility, all of it. Invented the whole world and all the crazy thoughts and emotions just to cover over that pure formless awareness that was the most beautiful thing I'd ever experienced. And you go, Why would I do that? It's the most insane thing to do. So I guess I cried at the loss of it. It's like, how could we have lost that? How could we have done this and lost it? Fortunately, it's not, permanently lost. It just temporarily seems to be obscured, and that's the veil. So, these experiences are there to show us what we learn in theory. You can frame all of this, and you can study this, and you can go, okay, well, there's the true self, or the Christ, or we could call it the Buddha or the Atma, and you put names to it, and you put it in a neat diagram like this. But really, this just points you. Maybe it points you to the experience, and helps you maybe frame the experience. Okay, I kind of understand now what's going on, so it doesn't freak me out. And that's really the only value it has. The actual experience is what's valuable, because that reveals the truth of who you are, which is experiential. It's not conceptual, theoretical, intellectual knowledge. It's experience. And this is what all the mystics throughout the ages have said. Go in and experience God. It's not God isn't something you worship as some kind of concept outside of yourself. It's a very personal experience. Comes to you. So, amazing, really well done. Right? It's not really well done. I mean, but you know what I mean. What you've done is you've done the work over consistently over a period of, what is it, 4 months now? I can't remember when you joined. 4 months, 4 months.
Yeah.
So you've been doing this pretty consistently, putting in a lot of time, and then because you've put in that time, it's the mind training, then these experiences happen. If you hadn't done the mind training, it's unlikely that would have happened.
Yeah, I noticed that if I come on the call consecutively, I get more mystical experiences. And then if I have a break, it changes, they don't happen, or they become less, or there's definitely a shift. It's like a build-up, isn't it? Accumulation that it kind of, these calls kind of superpower the process of transformation and support it and keep it going, like builds up a momentum or something. Don't know, that's just my mind trying to make sense of it.
Yeah, it's difficult to explain, but I think you're tapping into the truth in these calls. It's coming through, and so that's going to start to open up your mind to that energy, well, not energy, to that presence. Allow it to come through more and more. And if you do it systematically, progressively, every day, then this is how it's done. This is why yogis, mystics, monks, and so on. This is why they practice spiritual practices over and over and again every day, because they know if you do this consecutively, you almost build the energy, and then these kinds of mystical experiences are far more likely to happen than if you just kind of dip in every now and then. So, what you're really doing is what so many of these masters and mystics have done through the ages, spending the concentrated time doing spiritual practice, like hours every day, and that's going to open you up to have these kinds of experiences. Which, well, is there anything else that's more valuable? You ask yourself, like, do I really want to spend my time doing anything else when this is the result? You've had a transcendent, miraculous vision and experience.
And they've got quite a lot of depth
beyond time and space. Can anything in this world really compare?
Yeah, these experiences have got quite a lot of depth, haven't they? I feel that because they are out of time. So how would I explain it? So I can be in that experience now, even though it happened this morning. It's kind of, I don't know, omnipresent or whatever the word be. It's here now, whatever. So then, like other mystical experiences we've both had, you always remember it, don't you? It's always there as a beacon of experience. So you can tap into it at any point. And as we grow and learn about ourselves and learn more about how it all works, then every time we tap into it, we can get a slightly different understanding of it, or not even, the word's not understanding, an experience. Do you know what I mean? As we develop, this experience is still there for access, regardless of where we are. So we can dip into it, remember it, and then come out and, you know, carry on with our life again. But it's always there to dip into. And I'm presuming as we move along our journey, or whatever we want to call it, we are developing more. Choose my words carefully because none of them quite fit, do they? As we develop more, we can refer back to the mystical experience. And I don't know if we'd gain more from it, or, but it's like a resource, isn't it, to tap into?
Yeah, becomes a foundation for your life. You know, that experience I had, it's like 5 minutes of my life, 10 minutes. You think, but it's profound. You remember it for the rest of your life because you were in an altered state and it was profound for you. So it becomes a reference point for this. You know, at any point, if you find the ego coming back, you go back into it and say, well, what was that? Remember, you saw it very clearly in that moment. It wasn't conceptual. No one was telling you. It landed for you. You experienced it, and then there's kind of an intuitive understanding of it that arose because from the experience. And this is how these great teachings originated. The Buddha and Christ, Yeshua, and the Buddha and Lao Tzu and various other masters. You know, it came from the experience, and that's why these teachings have lost it, because they were able to interpret their experiences in a helpful way for other people, so that, you know, other people could learn from that. And that was kind of one of the gifts that they had as teachers. But it came from personal experience. That was always the difference between them and the priests or the scribes in Yeshua's day. You know, the scribes, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, recorded in the Bible, and they had theological knowledge. They had conceptual knowledge. They'd studied the Torah. You know, they knew the history of all of it, and they could recite, you know, the 600 odd laws of the Torah, and they studied but they didn't have the experience, the mystic experience that he'd had. He went into the desert and had, you know, this profound experience of letting go of the ego. And so then came and taught from that place, understood in a deeper way because of that experience. So that, you know, that mystic experience in the desert was probably something he referenced all the time in his teaching. And that was, you know, the opening into the Christ self. So it's recorded that he came out of the desert after 40 days of intense prayer / meditation, having encountered the devil. He faced the ego, in other words, and let it go, and then began his ministry. Then was baptized by John the Baptist, symbolically. Okay, you're now the Christ, and you're ready for your life's work. And so that mystic experience was the foundation of the whole of Christianity, really. As the Buddhas, you know, was the foundation of Buddhism, and sat under the Bo tree and for hours and hours meditated until finally he broke through into another awareness, that actually there is only this pure formless awareness, that everything he'd been seeking was already there in his awareness right now, and then was able to download and process a whole lot of insights around that experience, which became then the core of Buddhism. He could then communicate that to people in an understandable way, and that became fundamental, the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism. But it came out of his experience. So, you know, we can learn from these masters. They were just human like us, seemingly human, but trying to find this deeper awareness. And some of them did, and they broke through into this higher awareness. And then, you know, these great teachings came out of that. So, you know, you're in that tradition. They are actually, all of their experiences every single master's experience, and particularly Yeshua's, and we reference the Buddha's experiences and sometimes Lao Zi's as well. They're all there helping you. It's like that energy is with you, and you're just saying, well, okay, I'm willing. Show me what's on the menu for today, and then learning to trust your own guidance. So yesterday you went, okay, I'm coming off the call early. Okay, that's absolutely fine. I'm not saying don't do it, because that's intuitively what you felt like you needed, and then that opens you to the mystic experience, just going and resting. So yeah, it's very interesting, fascinating, really, is this domain.
Mm. Yeah, it's nice to have them though, isn't it? It's nice to it's a feeling like, oh, there's more. I've always said that I always want to experience it directly. I don't want us to be told about it. I've always felt like that for the last 30 years. So, yeah, it's good.
Well, that's the prayer of the mystic. Show me directly. I want direct experience of truth, secondhand knowledge, someone else's experience, passed down sometimes for hundreds or thousands of years through these spiritual traditions and religions is secondhand at best. And that's unfortunately how most spiritual seekers and religious people experience it, not from their own experience. They experience it secondhand. Oh, well, it's Yeshua's experience. Oh, okay, so I can read the Bible, and I can read about someone else's experience, and I can kind of get maybe a little glimpse, a little taste of what they experienced. But this path is direct experience, and Yeshua's taking you into that through the mind training, saying, okay, this is all preparation for these kinds of experiences, which will happen when you're ready, that will show you what I'm saying is true, that you will have no doubt anymore when you've experienced that. Because what was that? You can't deny that. You say, I had an experience that was absolutely powerful and profound. I can't say that didn't happen. And there's been many instances of diehard scientific materialists. Bruce Lipton was one of them. There was another guy who got into near-death experience. He was a brain surgeon. What was his name? It'll come to me. Eric, someone. And really, no, they were like the scientific materialist model, and they really believed in that. And then they have one mystic experience, and what's his name? Eric, I think. Yeah, Erickson's. Let's see. Christian Erickson. Okay, so that's something else. There was a brain surgeon. He was a surgeon, brain surgeon. I'll find his name. Diehard, grew up trained in the medical model. Proof of Heaven. There we go. Proof of Heaven. What was his name? Eben Alexander. That's the guy. Proof of Heaven: A Neurosurgeon's Journey into the Afterlife. Right. So there you have a neurosurgeon who was totally convinced by his experience, his near-death experience, that there's something else, and suddenly became a mystic because of that experience. And all of that scientific materialist paradigm, it can't sustain in the face of the mystic experience, because you go, how can I deny that I had that experience?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that it is so profound that it, you can't say it's real or not real. It just is, isn't it? But it for someone like him that was the neurosurgeon, and would have been I remember listening to his book or reading his book, and when you're in that position, you're likely to trash your whole lifetime's work, aren't you, by saying you've had this experience, because everyone just like, oh, you're joking. And but it's so real, isn't it, that it changes people's lives.
Like, well, I can't deny it anymore. So it's a coma resulted in brain death. So his brain is dead. According to the scientific materialist paradigm, that should mean your consciousness ceases as well, because the brain produces consciousness according to that theory. But you have a near-death experience, your brain is dead, but you're having this experience somewhere, not in the brain, well, the model must change. You can't believe that anymore because you've had an experience of something outside of the body and the brain. And anyone who's ever had a near-death experience says the same thing, like, well, there's something else. 15 seconds after death, all brain activity ceases. Okay, so there's no more brain activity that they can measure with an ECG. So according to the scientific materialist model, if consciousness really is a product of the brain, then all consciousness should stop. There should be no more experience. But that's not the case. Here, near-death experiences happen. This person has this whole amazing experience. They come back to so-called life, and they go, I've just had this profound experience, and you can't really doubt it because they speak with such conviction of it, and there's deep feeling and emotion, and it changes the entire life in one experience. So how can you doubt it? So it just makes a mockery of the scientific materialist paradigm that says, well, this is all there is, this external world. Go back to the integral model. Scientific materialism says this world, the external world of behavior and systems that you can see, feel, measure, touch, is the only reality. That is just shown to be completely false by the interior experience. It says there's something else, and I wasn't in my body, I wasn't in my brain. I went somewhere else entirely, another domain. And science, this is the final frontier of science. Science is starting to go, well, what about consciousness? What about this internal domain? How does that work then? And they're trying to kind of measure it and frame it, and they never will be able to because it's not frameable. It doesn't work the same way as the material world. I was listening to a guy, scientists talk about, the quest to identify consciousness, and if they could invent a consciousness detector, then you could say this thing is conscious and this isn't conscious. But what they're trying to do is apply the methods of the external world, the exterior domain, to something interior that's not measurable. It's never going to work. It's another domain. You can't measure it. If you could measure it, then it wouldn't be the pure formless awareness of perfect love that it really is. Ultimately, it blows all measurement, all models away, and it's infinite, eternal, pure awareness, pure formless awareness, as we call it, which in the end is the only explanation. So they'll search and try and explain consciousness in scientific terms, and eventually they'll realize that you can't. You have to abandon the scientific paradigm entirely to explain it, which is what they're scared of. Because ultimately, God, pure formless awareness of perfect love, transcends it all. It undoes the construct of the mind that they try and explain in science entirely, which is what the egos are scared of. So that's why science typically stays away from consciousness, because it's a domain it doesn't really understand. So they then focus on just the external. Okay, what's measurable? Even great scientists like Stephen Hawking, apparently in his book, I did read it. I must recall, I don't recall ever seeing the word consciousness. So he's explaining a theory of everything, right? That's what the book's called, a theory of everything, and that theory of everything doesn't include consciousness, which is bizarre. How can you not have consciousness in a theory of everything? Clearly, it's a blind spot in the scientific mindset. So you've just gone into pure, this interior individual domain. That's just pure experience. The mystic experience is purely your subjective experience. There is nothing to measure it. There's nothing to say, well, that happened, and there's no evidence of it other than what you know to be true and you remember. So science says, well, you can't verify that. And if you can't verify it with its tools, then it's not real. And, more enlightened scientists like Rupert Sheldrake saying that's just not the case. And science needs to expand its horizons beyond the scientific materialist paradigm to accept that consciousness is real and that it exists, and you have to take it into account in any model, because and even quantum mechanics even says that directly. It says there is no reality in the absence of observation. So without observation, there can be none of these observed. Without a perceiver, there can be no observed behaviors and no performance outcomes. The perceiver is fundamental to that, i.e. consciousness is fundamental to it. So you start to see, I mean, I think the beauty of all these teachings is you start to see how they've come about, that the mystic experience of various people informed them. This knowledge, true knowledge, comes from these experiences, and then it gets framed in these teachings and these models. And if you have these mystic experiences, then it just all makes sense. I mean, when I had mine last year, it was just like, wow, it just dropped for me. The entire Course in Miracles just dropped in. I was like, okay, I get it. I actually get this now. It makes complete sense to me. Whereas before, although intellectually it made sense, maybe experientially there was still something missing. But that experience, like, okay, I know this is true now. I absolutely know it's true. And then interestingly, that's when the art of letting go really sort of started taking off, and I got more people and more interest because I was obviously ready and in a better state of mind. So the external world of behavior then mirrors the internal. You have an internal shift, and then the external shifts as well. And if you look at these great teachers who've really had a profound impact on the world, that's how it always worked. They had profound inner experiences, mystic experiences, and then that became the reference for the rest of their life for this inspired life where they lived out a divine purpose and made huge impact on other people's lives and changed the world. It always came from the mystic knowledge. They'd gone deeply into it, sometimes spent their entire life doing that, and then after that everything changed. Yeshua, before the age of 30, he was a carpenter, hadn't done anything particularly extraordinary, but he was seeking. And then once he'd had his mystic experience, he came out of that and then spent 3 years teaching, and that profoundly changed the world for the next 2,000 years, that 3 years. But it was based on the foundation of his mystic experience. The Buddha, similarly, spent his entire life searching for it, had to leave the comfort of this very cushy life, go into kind of some serious arduous spiritual training for 7 years, nearly kills himself, and then finally gets it, just has this enlightenment experience, and then dedicates the rest of his life to teaching that. And that's how Buddhism came about. So these are the examples, the hero's journeys really of these people that we can learn from. And you're on your own hero's journey. So what's going to come out of Sally post mystic experience could be very interesting. To see what unfolds and how the spirit then uses that, because it wants you now. If it's got a clear channel into this world, then it wants that channel to do its work, and then it will inspire you to do the work in different ways, and things will change on the level of form because of that. You're already doing the work, but see where it goes. It'd be very interesting to see how that unfolds for you and other people, because they will be direct beneficiaries then of your mystic experience, which is how you share it. He says, when I'm healed, I'm not healed alone. You share that experience with everyone.
Yeah, look forward to it.
Perhaps a book, who knows? Share that experience somehow. Podcast. I mean, there's so many ways you can do it. Just be open and ask for the guidance. Okay. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's given us a nice intro really into so I'm just going to increase that for you a bit. You can read the quote from the Pope again, actually. So this Pope, I think, is quite enlightened, because he's saying stuff that you're like, okay, there's some depth to that.
All life has inestimable value, even the weakest and most vulnerable. The sick, the old, the unborn, and the poor are masterpieces of God's creation, made in his own image, destined to live forever and deserving of the utmost reverence and respect.
So really stating, what this is pretty much what every spiritual master throughout history has said. Everyone is worthy. Everyone has this life essence in them, and therefore deserves to be treated with respect and love and care, because they have the very essence of life, which is the same essence as is new. So it's like the namaste greeting in Sanskrit says, "I am you." I see you. I see what is in me, in you. It's the great I am presence that you then acknowledge. And as you acknowledge it in another, you acknowledge it in yourself. And this is where the golden rule of behavior, golden rule being do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Well, that never works if you're not in the state of mind of oneness, because you'll be thinking differently. But it makes complete sense if you go, well, I am that person. I am the same essence. The very life essence that they are is the same life essence as in me. So I am one with them. Now the golden rule of behavior makes complete sense and now has a strong foundation. This is why trying to change behavior, if we go back to our diagram, you try and change behavior on the level of form. There we go. It never works. Just exterior training. Okay, well let's train people to behave kindly, to do acts of kindness. That doesn't work unless there's an internal experience that is motivating that. And I shared the story. I'll share it again in this context. It's a lady who'd started a WhatsApp group called Random Acts of Kindness, which is a nice idea. So she thinks, well, post, your random acts of kindness every day and inspire others. And so as a random act of kindness, I posted a meditation. And she said, no, we don't want that on here. It's just behavior, just the acts of kindness and not the internal. So that's an example of being focused on the exterior and not seeing it integrally, because you can't have consistent random acts of kindness unless internally you're feeling connected to your source and you're feeling that love that is the source of the kindness. And of course, spiritual practices like meditation connect you with that. So that's an example of how this flatland worldview limits us and stops us from being integral, even in spiritual circles. Okay, so let's go back to here. So no matter what form it takes and what appearances of imperfection they seem to have, all people and other forms of life are sacred, because all life is created by God, or restated in our alternative Arthur language, is extended by pure formless awareness of perfect love, and so will live forever. It doesn't mean it will live forever in its current form and time. It's not live forever in time. That means it actually means live timelessly in eternity. So this quote's pointing us to this eternal life that all the great masters like Yeshua have talked about. This sacred essence of life that's in all life, which means that all life and all people deserve respect because they're actually all the same, and they are the essence of God or love, this life essence that you are. Okay, any thoughts on that?
No, I agree.
Okay. Next paragraph, the restatement in alternative language.
The restatement in alternative language allows the Holy Spirit or remembrance of perfect love to reinterpret the quote so it makes logical sense. After all, how can all the forms of suffering that plague every form of life in this world be sacred? How could a supposedly perfect creator have made such a mess of his creation?
And this really is the central problem with any dualistic teaching. It says there's a perfect creator, but there's all this pain and suffering and sickness and death. So the perfect creator created all of it. So then how can the perfect creator then be perfect if it can create such imperfection? And there you have a paradox, which none of the traditional religions like Christianity can answer. So the Pope will say this, but if you said, well, if this is all God's creation and God is perfect love, then how can there be the vulnerable and the sick and the old and the unborn and the poor? How can all that really exist if God is perfect love? And he'll say something like, well, that's just a mystery. Or, God gives us these things. We can't really say why God gives us these things, but he does, so we have to accept him. These kinds of, because it can't really make sense of the paradox unless you understand the ultimate truth, that none of this is true and none of this is real. So a lot of people then go, well, this doesn't make any sense. And they throw the baby out with the bathwater, completely deny the existence of a God or any higher power. That's the atheists. Oh, well, it's all a load of rubbish. There is no God. Yeah, there is no false God. And that can be quite helpful. To deny a false concept of God is actually a helpful step in finding the truth, but it's not the end. So, like Richard Dawkins, I don't know if you've read his God Delusion. He defines God in a certain way, the traditional religious way, and then he seeks to disprove it. And there's whole books dedicated to that. Okay, great. You disproved a false concept of God. Fine, fair enough. But that doesn't invalidate the truth that there is something else that's beyond that false concept, which he hints at in his introduction for a page or two, but doesn't really explore, doesn't go into the mystic concept of God at all. So define God as false and then knock it down, and then you create a book and sell lots of books and seem to be quite impressive. But actually, you haven't considered what God really is to start with, because you can't disprove that true nature of God is actually impossible to disprove because it's experiential. So who are you to say that doesn't exist when people are having mystic experiences all the time of this presence? You can't really. So as I say here, in fact you read, but denying a false concept of God.
Denying a false concept of God doesn't invalidate the truth and is in fact a necessary step in awakening from the dream of form existing in time to the timeless, formless awareness of perfect love that is the essence of life itself.
So you must deny the false concept first. If you believe that this idea of God, which is absurd, really, the typical religious idea of some kind of fearful, wrathful, vengeful God sitting somewhere outside of you, some kind of super being that oversees this mad creation and now punishes you for your apparent sins, for denying his will. You must deny that, because that's a projection of your ego. That concept of God is in fact the ego taking form and trying to make itself into God. So that needs to be denied. That's helpful, but then replaced with something else. And if you don't have that mystic awareness, then often there's a void. There's nothing there. It's kind of an empty teaching. So you read Richard Dawkins' book. Okay, so he denies God and he says this is why this concept of God, the traditional religious concept, is false, but doesn't replace it with anything else except scientific materialism. Says, well, then just flatland, just this world of form is real. That's what he offers as a replacement, the scientific materialist worldview, which is sadly lacking because it doesn't explain interior experience at all. It doesn't explain anything at all, in fact, because where does that behavior come from? Where does all of this originate? It doesn't explain that. So if you're going to deconstruct your current reality, you need to have a replacement. And that's exactly what Yeshua is doing with the Course of Miracles, saying deconstruct all of this falsity in your mind and then replace it with the truth of this perfect love, oneness, pure formless awareness, which is arising more and more as you let go of the one through the process of forgiveness or letting go. Then this starts to arise more and more in your awareness, and we're moving into that phase of increased awareness of the truth in this phase 2. So it's quite appropriate. Now we're moving into part 2 of the workbook, that you're having more mystic experiences, because that's what it's designed to do. And interestingly, you only started the program about 3 months into it, so you'd skipped about 3 months of it, but still, it's had that effect. So it just shows you, for anyone listening to the recording, it shows you what's possible. And I don't think Sally or me or anyone is particularly special. Yeshua wasn't particularly special. Neither was the Buddha. None of the masters were special. They just had a great desire to know the truth, and they dedicated themselves to that. And they were willing to do the work, spiritual practice. And that then allowed them to have these experiences. So it's just dedication and discipline will get you there. Sorry, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I had this picture out yesterday afternoon before I had all my experiences, and I used EAM to sway or douse on any areas that I need to work on. It was the thought of separation. So I released the thought of separation just before all that kicked off.
Right. Yeah, well, there you go. So that's, validation that the theory must be correct, because that is the top of the tree of the ego. So if you let go of that master thought of separation, the sponsoring idea behind all illusions, then what's left must be pure formless awareness of perfect love. That's the theory. If you have an actual experience of that, which you did, then the theory is confirmed to be true. And nothing can then shake your faith in that, because you've had the theory, you've learned the theory over and over and over again. It's prepared you for the experience that theory is true. And then you don't just believe something, then you actually know it to be true. That's what knowledge is. It's an experiential knowing, which is where this course is taking us, into the experiential knowing of truth, rather than just intellectual understanding. It's a start. Understanding this model is useful as preparation for an experience that shows you that it's true experientially. And then you start to you look at the integral model, then your experience is integral. So you have then a whole. This is integral experience. You understand all of this experientially. Yes, I can observe this in behavior, in form, but I've had this deep experience that validates this, that justifies this, that confirms that what I've learned, the theory is true. And the systems, this is a system, thought system we've learned that this system is true. This teaching, the Holy Spirit's thought system, reinterpretation of reality is true, and it works because I had the actual experience of it working. And all of that sort of mind training that we've done over and over, we've gone into this diagram, was the preparation for this collapse of the ego, and just kind of letting go and surrendering into the mystic experience. So, and that's cumulative, many hours of looking at it. Every day we're doing this, and so often I reference back to it. So eventually it's like, well, yes, you're going to have the experience. So yeah, well done.
It happens.
See what unfolds for you.
Happens when it's going to happen, doesn't it? Can't make it happen.
Yeah, but you that's the thing. You consciously work at it. This is what Yeshua's saying, don't just sit back and expect it to happen. Consciously work at this every day by doing the mind training. And then you open yourself up to these experiences happening. Okay, so just read that again, because it leads nicely into this little teaching about Helen Bull. But denying a false concept of God.
But denying a false concept of God doesn't invalidate the truth, and is in fact a necessary step in awakening from the dream of form existing in time to the timeless, formless awareness of perfect love that is the essence of life itself. This is perhaps why Yeshua chose to transmit his master teaching and mind training course in the form of A Course in Miracles to an atheist, Helen Schuckman, and an agnostic helper, Bill Thetford. Shall I carry on? Because they were not formally religious, and so didn't believe in the usual religious dogma that God created the physical universe, this world, and all the forms of life that seemed to exist in them. And their minds were actively asking for a solution to the conflict their egos were causing. They were open to this solution. They were open to this alternative message that no form of life really exists. Oh, were they? But only the timeless essence of life itself that underlies all seeming form is real, as he stated in his succinct summary of his course's message that he communicated to her to kickstart the process of writing the course one momentous night in October 1965. I've just been listening to a book about them and how it all came about and how they wrote it. And they certainly had their ups and downs and their challenges on the way to doing it. It wasn't an easy adventure for either of them, by the sounds of it.
No, this was their own spiritual awakening. And Helen Schuckman had huge resistance. So she was open enough to be the scribe. She wasn't open enough to fully accept the message.
No.
Even though she knew it was true. She said, I'm in the ridiculous position of not believing in my own life's work. It's probably why she died of cancer, because it's like that level of internal conflict, is going to cause disease. So she didn't fully accept it. Bill, I think, did, from the sounds of it. He was sort of the first example of the effects of the course, because at the end of his life, apparently, he was just really serene, peaceful, collapsed a lot of the ego, and he'd actually gone much deeper than Helen had, because he didn't have all of that resistance. Or maybe I'm sure he had some resistance. He didn't have as strong an ego maybe as her. So interesting. He was agnostic, so he sort of had some kind of idea. Okay, there's something else. Agnostics are, sitting on the fence, really, going, well, I'm not going to say either way. There might be, but I'm not sure. Whereas an atheist is like, no, there's definitely not anything else. So it's interesting he chose these two people who were not traditional believers, and the reason he did that is because they come from a, let's say, a staunch Christian background, with all of the false concepts that they learned. It would have been very difficult, possibly impossible, for them to accept this, and they just would have rejected it and said it's the devil's work, and it never would have come through. And so he needed people who were out of that, who were actually scientific materialists. So their mind was at least empty of all of the dogma, religious dogma. And then they were able to bring this in and start understanding it from their perspective, which was a psychological perspective. And they started seeing that actually, the psychology of the mind that they'd been studying was really what spiritual teaching, what Yeshua was really teaching. They started connecting the dots. But the final message that, nothing real can be threatened and nothing unreal exists, herein lies the peace of God, that certainly Helen, that eluded her. She couldn't ever fully accept that, even though she transcribed it.
It's quite impressive, though, that they really did transcribe it, and I presume fairly accurately. They wrote what they got. I think that's really impressive, isn't it? Because you would, you can imagine your mind coming in, oh, we'll leave that bit out, or people won't understand that. We just won't put that in the book. So yeah, very impressive.
Well, listen to this. I don't know if you listened to
No, I haven't listened to that yet.
her interview.
Mm.
It's quite interesting how she how she was described to someone this process and how it worked. She said it was, I can't really even explain it, but it's like this I knew what the words were. They would just kind of come to me. And sometimes, and to start with, she would go, oh, I don't like that word, and she'd go back and change it. And then this voice wasn't really a voice, she said, because it was just, she didn't hear it. There was no hearing. It was just something that kind of came to her, and she just knew the words and then wrote them down. So then it would continue, and it would use the same word. And she realized very quickly that she shouldn't go back and change the words because it was logically consistent within itself. So it did make me wonder. And she said, no, I didn't do that. It made me wonder about our whole translation exercise. But I think what we're doing is being logically consistent. So all the terms are the same. You know what I mean? You change them across the board. You don't sort of go, okay, well, sometimes we'll call it God and sometimes we'll call it perfect love. It's a consistent language across the board. Reinterpret it, then it's consistent. So then there's, then you remove the internal contradiction, then you remove any contradictions, which was, Yeshua was trying to do. So that's why it's used consistently the same language. He uses Holy Spirit and God, because that's the language that he chose. So I think if you're going to do it, you've got to be consistent in that.
I think we've all given you the feedback that it's a lot easier to read once the words have changed. We've all said to feel the difference. Yeah. I think if it's only a stepping stone to getting people into understanding what it's about, that's good, because you're not letting go of the original, are you? So it feels right, and I'm sure you'd be guided if it wasn't the right thing to do.
Yeah, exactly. It does feel like, okay, this is like the next evolution of A Course in Miracles. It's been in the world for 50 odd years, something like that, nearly 50 years. And, it's already had profound impact on many people's lives. But there's, maybe 3 million copies out there. Maybe it's touched, who knows, millions of people's lives. But there are lots of those copies that are not even read. Maybe 90% sitting on bookshelves, gathering dust, not even read, not being used. So it's about bringing, what's in the course into people's lives, and it becomes the living truth. This is why in the Bible says the living God. Okay, it must live in you. It's not something that sits on a bookshelf and gathers dust. And so that's the calling. We're here in this world temporarily to do the work that's necessary, and I think this is a necessary task someone needs to do. So here we are doing it. Okay, so I thought maybe it'd be useful just to read this introduction. So this is A Course in Miracles. This is what came to Helen when this voice of Yeshua started transmitting the course to her. This is A Course in Miracles. It is a required course. Saying it's required, only the time you take it is voluntary. So only the time you take for it is voluntary. Free will does not mean that you can establish the curriculum. In other words, the curriculum of awakening is set. If we reference that to the hero's journey, this is the curriculum. We're all on the hero's journey, you like it or not. So the curriculum is set, but when you want to take the hero's journey is up to you. So that's your free will, apparently. So I was just having a look at the this introduction. So do you want to read it, Sally, and see you've read it before? See if anything else comes to you today after these experiences.
This is a course in miracles. It is a required course. Only the time you take it is voluntary. Free will does not mean you can establish the curriculum. It means only that you can elect what you want to take at a given time. The course does not aim at teaching the meaning of love, for that is beyond what can be taught. It does aim, however, at removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, which is your natural inheritance. The opposite of love is fear, but what is all-encompassing can have no opposite. This course can therefore be summed up very simply in this way. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. Yeah, did feel different. The bit about that you can't establish the curriculum. Yeah, I just was pondering that, you know, with the changing of the words. Yeah, I suppose everything's interpretation, isn't it? How we respond to every word is our own history, isn't it? Our own experience in life so far. So yeah, we can only do the best to point in the right direction, can't we?
The curriculum is really the hero's journey. That's the curriculum. We can't establish the curriculum. The curriculum is truth, know thyself. So that's always been the case. It always will be the case. When you want to take the journey, when you want to start, is up to you. So you can delay it, you can procrastinate, you can deny it. Most people spend their entire lives doing that. Or you can say, okay, all right, I'm up for it. Here we go. And then the ride of your life begins. That's why you're here, is to take that hero's journey. And the hero's journey is experiential. It's not something you can theoretically learn. You have to experience it. You have to journey it. Go through all of the challenges and the temptations and the trials and meet the mentors and the helpers and the guides and overcome the threshold guardians and let go of all of your fears and go through the bliss. The ego die, like everything is lost and hopeless, and then come out of that as a transformed person, transformed human being, with emphasis on being, understanding what one-ment really means, and then returning to society to teach this and help others to undertake their hero's journey. And that's the curriculum. That's universal, timeless. You can't change that. That pattern is set. When you want to take it is up to you. That's what he's saying.
Okay. And I think the changing of the words really does create the experience, doesn't it? The smoothness and the softness of the change of wording of it does really bring in it does really bring in the feeling of it. Well, it does now. Initially, it was like really difficult. It's like learning another language, but it's got easier over time, and now it just feels natural.
Yeah, and then it becomes, well, yes, you know, that's the interpretation I prefer, because it's opening me to the experience more than the other words. So yeah, that's why we're doing it. The meaning of love, and maybe Yeshua didn't use those words because Helen wasn't ready for them. He said pure formless awareness of perfect love. That might have freaked her out even more than God. Who knows, you know? So it's all although the truth is true, ultimate truth is true and never changes. In this world, as you go, you know, more and more into the truth, change seems to happen, and the hero's journey is actually really interesting, inspiring. You're called on to do all kinds of things, have all kinds of experiences. This is an inspired life that you're living. It's certainly not static. It's very dynamic. And it's the guiding hand of the Spirit is you know, always with you. It can bring about very, very interesting experience. You couldn't say that Yeshua or the Buddha or any of these masters led a dull life. They didn't. It was, very, very inspired, interesting, journeying, meeting people. It was an expanded experience of life that they had. So he's taking us into the same thing, saying, well, you on this hero's journey, the spirit with you, the loving presence is going to guide you. And that's where he leaves us at the end of the work. Just this Holy Spirit presence with you, guiding you in all your thoughts, words, and actions. In a state where the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, which is your natural inheritance, have been removed. So what you experienced in the last 24 hours is a result of removing those blocks. You let go of obviously a big deep-seated one, all that anger and rage, and then you drop that, and then, well, what's left is the pure formless awareness that it was covering over. So the opposite of love is fear, seemingly fear, but what is all-encompassing can have no opposite. So there's the non-dual truth. Seemingly an opposite, but there really is no opposite. And it's very difficult to understand that intellectually. You can only really understand that experientially, can't you? So when you had the experience of an all-encompassing love with no opposite, then you go, oh, okay, I get it, because I've had the experience. I was in that pure formless awareness of perfect love. So yeah, it makes complete sense to me that is possible, because I've experienced it. Otherwise, it doesn't seem to be possible. And then summed up, so from your mystic experience perspective, those 3 lines, nothing real can be threatened.
Yeah.
Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. What does that mean to you now?
Yeah, it feels different now. Yeah.
Does it mean more? There's something else. There's
Yeah.
another quality.
Yeah, I couldn't really explain it, but yeah, it does. Before it was just a thought, and now it's yeah, there aren't words, are there? It was a very real experience. It's permanent. It's a state that will always be there. And in that experience, nothing else existed. Yeah, literally.
So nothing real can be threatened. So then you experientially, you know that, because in that state, there was no threat, there was no fear. So you've gone into the non-dual reality that he's talking about. Experienced it. And then these words make sense. Otherwise they don't. To someone who's just in dogma and concepts, this can try and understand it conceptually. What is all-encompassing can have no opposite, but it just seems to be a paradox. So like, well, he's contradicting himself. I don't understand this. You can only really understand it from the mystic experience. Nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. And then you feel, that peace arising. From that realization, it's inevitable that peace will arise. Okay, so any other thoughts on this? Yeah, so it's interesting, Helen and Bill.
Sorry, can I just say, it was interesting how Helen says that she was able to receive the information and stop at any point. So she could, be in a taxi and then stop, or have a conversation, and it would start as though she hadn't stopped, and it would always be there. That's the same sort of energy that I experienced in my experience this morning, that it'll always be there, it doesn't go away, and you just go back to it, and when you're ready to, you tap into it again. So yeah, that plays up. Yeah. Sorry.
You start to see that it's a universal experience. That's what he points to. He says a universal theology is impossible, but a universal experience is not only possible, but necessary. So it all points to the universal experience. And the beauty of this is that no one's excluded. So it doesn't matter how lost you seem to be in the world, as Helen and Bill were by their own admission. Considerable investment in the values of the world, concerned with personal and professional acceptance and status, and their lives were hardly in accord with anything that the Course advocates. So, and it was given to them because that's where it is necessary. The teaching was necessary for people who are unenlightened, not for those who are enlightened. As you mentioned, Bill had worked for the CIA. People would go, how can someone who's worked for the CIA bring this great spiritual teaching into the world? But Spirit doesn't work that way. It doesn't go, oh, you've worked for the CIA, you're very bad, you're sinful and evil and guilty, and so you can't bring in this teaching. Not at all. It says, well, if you're open and you're willing, then you'll do. Just openness and willingness is your only qualification, really. So I say, if you ever feel like you're unworthy studying or teaching this course, Yeshua's course, because you're just too lost or too sinful. So something like, it's just hopeless. I just can't do this. I'm hopeless. I'm a hopeless sinner. Will the religious person say, or someone who's not religious. I'm no good. Just get everything. I can't do it. Remember that the people who it was given to probably felt the same way, and look at what happened with them, and how their lives have profoundly influenced millions of other people's lives. That was their work to do in this world. So we all have a function to fulfill here while we're here, if we will just open ourselves and listen. So yeah, I'd recommend read this. Listen to this. It's only 13 minutes, 14 minute clip. It was recorded at a dinner party, apparently. So you can hear kind of music fade in the background of her experience, the conversation this guy had with her, and then obviously recorded it. Very, very interesting to hear what she had to say about it. Okay, so that prepares us quite nicely, I think, for the lesson. So shall we dive into that? Okay, so if you read the original and then the translation.
Now would I be as God created me. Now I am as perfect love extends me. I am perfect love.
So again, different, much more present. Yeah, I am as perfect love extends me. So I am that, rather than would I be. Mm-hmm. So instead of the first one, it's aspirational. Now would I be? Okay, so I want to be as God created me. Now I am as this perfect love extends me. So I'm claiming it right now, which is more powerful in helping you to actually experience what God is, which is perfect love. So now I am as perfect love extends me. And when I claim that, I'm in that presence. I am that love. Going back to, we talked about just saying I am love as one of the most powerful affirmations you can say. It's so simple and so direct pointer into this expanded experience we call love. So use whichever one works, but it seems that the alternative works better for most people. So use that if it works for you, and write it out on your cards. You're still doing that. Write it out. So it's with you always, just as a reminder.
Yeah.
And that just becomes a pointer, doesn't it, into the state. That's the beauty of these lessons. Just a simple sentence, one simple sentence points you into this profound mystical state. And then you can reference that experience that you had this morning. If you can use all of the pointers of these lessons from now on to point you back to that state, and just drop into that state for a minute or two and re-experience it, that's hugely powerful and life-changing, because every hour then you're experiencing that mystic state and reconnecting experientially with your source. Well, that's the fast track. You don't have to wait, another 60 years to have it. You can experience it every hour.
Yeah, good idea.
Okay, so if you read paragraph 1, the original, and then the translation beneath it.
Today I will accept the truth about myself. I will arise in glory and allow the light in me to shine upon the world throughout the day. I bring the world the tidings of salvation, which I hear as God my Father speaks to me. And I behold the world that Christ would have me see, or where it ends the bitter dream of death, or where it is my Father's call to me. Alternatively, today I will accept the truth about myself. I will arise in magnificence and allow the true awareness in me to shine upon the world throughout the day. I bring the world the message of awakening, which I hear as perfect love. My source speaks to me. And I perceive the world that my true self wants to show me. Or where it ends the bitter dream of death, or where it is my source's call to me.
Very profound and appropriate, I'd say, given what's happened this morning.
Yeah.
How about today I accept? So it's very present. I arise in, I accept, not I will, I bring. Then he moves into I bring, I hear, I perceive. So this moves straight into it. Today I accept the truth about myself. Rise in magnificence, which is exactly the experience you had. So you understand why they use these words, glory. So it's trying to describe, this indescribable experience that is glorious, magnificent. Use whatever words you want. The words don't really do the experience justice. Allow the true awareness in me to shine upon the world throughout the day. So you sort of felt radiant, like this is shining out for me.
What I keep feeling is like a movement inside of me, which previous to this morning I would have said was an emotion, but there it isn't an emotion. So it's not like something I could name. And then when I read something like that, it makes me want to cry, really, on the edge of crying. And it's like, it's so beautiful. It makes me want to cry. But something that you can't name, I couldn't put a name to it. I can't say I am feeling whatever. But yeah, it's very interesting. I feel very different.
So it's a state. There's a distinction between a state of mind, a state of being, and an emotion. Many people say, well, feel your feelings. And in fact, I was listening to Alan Watts, and he said, no, well, you've got to be honest, you've got to feel your feelings, and there's no wrong feeling. And I get where he's coming from, saying, well, you have to become aware of it, don't repress them. But those feelings, those emotions are not the truth of your being. So ultimately, you have to choose to let them go. And then open yourself through that letting go to the state, the true state of your beingness that lies beyond this, that is not moved and shifting and changing in this interbulated state of emotion. Emotion, I mean, it is energy in motion, it's movement. Well, nothing that is true moves at all. It's just, it's a permanent, constant state. So when you start tapping into that, which you are, then you start having these experiences of just an awareness that doesn't move, that just is. And you just can rest in that. And at the highest state of samadhi, you rest in that for hours, days, weeks, months, years. People just rest in that. And it's perfect. It's the perfect state of mind. So why would you go anywhere? Is there any need to do anything if you're already resting in perfection? which is why these great masters often just sit in meditation and just be in that state, because where else are they going to go? What else are they going to do that can offer them that sublime experience? And you can carry that with you during your day, that magnificence, and it kind of permeates, colors your life experience. And that's living in the domain of the miraculous, or living in flow, if you prefer that language, where this awareness is now transforming your perception of everyone and everything. You see the world anew, fresh eyes. This is the real world. This is Christ's vision. So it's the magnificence translated into perceptual terms that allows you to still work in the world, actually be very effective, highly effective in the world. But you realize you're not of the world. You're working in the world, but you're not of the world. And you're bringing this awareness of another dimension into the world. That becomes your responsibility as the miracle worker.
Even flow is that emotion, energy in motion, isn't it? The flow.
Yeah, well, again, it's language, but in true flow, it's a state of mind that rests. You rest in your beingness, and there's this underlying happiness and peace, and that is pretty unshakable. So it doesn't matter what experiences are happening, that is a stable foundation. And then you might have thoughts coming in, you might have a little flicker of an emotion, but it's all happening within this deep peace that's always there, and you can never lose it. And so that experience you mentioned, yes, I realize that peace is always there. I can never really lose it. So I can relax. You see how relaxed and at ease and peaceful it is? Well, it's always there. I know it's always there. I can't ever lose it. I just drop into it anytime I want. I have the source of all life and love and peace and happiness and joy within me. I carry that wherever I go, and it's always with me. God is with me wherever I go. One of the course lessons, and then it becomes an experiential reality rather than something that you just intellectually know. Okay, so I bring the world the message of awakening. I hear as perfect love, my source speaks to me.
We've done it, haven't we?
Yeah, so there's this natural intention of desire to share it. And that's what he's saying. And your purpose becomes to share this magnificence that you experience. And I perceive the world my true self wants to show me. So this is Christ's vision he's talking about. From this higher state of mind, you perceive the world differently. As you say, everything's changed. You can't really say why, how, but everything changes. And where it ends, the bitter dream of death. Where is my source's call to me? Pointing us to the ultimate truth, the ultimate transcendent reality beyond death. Okay, so any thoughts on the first paragraph?
No. So number 2, Christ is my eyes today, and he the ears that listen to the voice of God today. Father, I come to you through him who is your Son and my true self as well. Amen. Alternatively, my true self sees for me and listens only to the voice of perfect love today. My source, I come to you through my true self that is your extension. Amen.
So there we have in this second paragraph, you have the Holy Trinity is explaining, come to you through my true self. So this true self sense of being one self rather than a separate self, identified with the body, is how we access this presence, knowledge, pure formless awareness, come to you through this Christ self that is your extension. So you cannot have knowledge of your true self without having the pure formless awareness of perfect love that underpins it. It's extending from there, and that from that extending of that awareness, you now have a concept. It's still conceptual. There's still a seeming separate self in a sense there, but that self is just one self. You realize that there's only one self. There's only one of us really here. And that self-concept, Christ, Buddha, is the highest self-concept you can have. That ultimately leads to complete surrender into just this pure awareness, pure formless awareness, perfect love, which Yeshua calls the kingdom of heaven. The Buddha called it nirvana. But beyond any concept of self, he taught the doctrine of no self. So he said, in this state, there's no self. He's correct. In pure formless awareness of perfect love, there is no self-concept. Yeshua taught that there's a Christ because he understood that in this world, we need some kind of intermediary, some kind of bridge to get to the pure formless awareness of perfect love from a seemingly separated sense of self that we've so identified with, requires an intermediary step of the one true self of the Christ to now identify with, that bridges the gap between these vastly separate states and allows us to now establish a communication with our true mind, our true awareness. So does it maybe the Holy Trinity make more sense now? You see how it's an operating system for your mind and for your life that you can use quite effectively when you understand it, to help you to actually live this teaching and live in a much more peaceful, happier way.
It seemed to make more sense to me before the experience. Now it just is. It's difficult to put it into a box.
Yeah, because in the end, the boxes aren't true. There's no real separation between this and this. So ultimately, this merges. Holy Trinity collapses, and it all merges into one. There's only one awareness. And so it was useful to have the Holy Trinity concept while we think we're separate, to help us to turn our minds to that oneness. But once we've attained oneness, then the model's not necessary. In heaven, there's no need for a Holy Trinity. It's just pure formless awareness of perfect love. That's all that's there. That's all that exists. So yeah, just drop in. Use the models if they help you. But just drop into experience more and more using these lessons. Speaking of which, that brings us to meditation, I think.
Lovely.
Yeah. So just making yourself comfortable. Sitting with your feet shoulder width apart, your back straight, cup your hands in your lap. Close your eyes. And start off by taking a nice deep breath in through the nose. And you're breathing in, noticing how the stomach rises and the chest rises. Subtle flow of air in through the nostrils. Top of the inhale, just pause. Breathe in again, maximal inhale breath. And just scan your mind. Observing any thoughts, any emotions going on, any physical sensations related to those in the body. Remind yourself that now I am as perfect love extends me. Now I am as perfect love extends me. As you breathe in, just feel this loving presence radiating through your mind. To your heart. Breathing into your heart center. It's breathing in this loving presence. It's the very essence of who you are as God or perfect love created or extended you. Accept this presence now. And then just, if there's any remaining blocks to the awareness of love's presence, just blow them away with the breeze of your breath. Exhale them out. Imagine a dark black smoke is leaving you out of your mouth, leaving your body out of every pore, every cell, every muscle, just expelling it all. Dark energy dissipating, going. Gone. Pull the lower stomach sharply into the spine. Expel the last remaining air out. And then just rest here for a few moments in deep peace and stillness. Quiet the mind, you find you don't need to breathe. So just rest for a few moments in the stillness of not breathing. See how long you can extend that for. Sinking deeper and deeper with each breath into the still, calm, quiet, peaceful place in your mind. Now when you're ready, just breathing normally again. Inhale and exhale. In and out through your nostrils. Just step back and observe the subtle flow of air into and out of the nostrils. As you observe that subtle movement of the breath, get stiller and calmer and quieter. Nothing else to go, nothing else to do, and nothing else to think about. Just breathe, observe the breath flowing into and out of your nostrils. Focus all your attention on a very narrow area in the nostrils. And when you do that, the more you open your mind to the spacious awareness, pure formless awareness of perfect love that you are. As today's lesson teaches, claim it now. Say, I am as God created me. I am as perfect love extends me. And feel that presence flooding into your mind, to your heart, into every pore, every cell, every muscle of your body. And sink inwards with each breath going deeper and deeper into the still, calm, quiet, peaceful silence, to the silent presence of love. And just surrender to whatever that experience is. No more need for words. Words are just pointers to say, I'm as perfect love extends me right now. And then just rest in that awareness. Let that awareness arise in your mind and your heart. Nowhere else to go, nothing else to do. Nothing else to think about. Next few minutes of deep silence, just breathe, observe the breath flowing into and out of the nostrils, observe the touch of the breath in the nostrils and the area just below the tip of your nose, between your nose and your upper lip. And that just keeps your mind clear, calm, open and aware, not thinking about time and space and anything you have to do in the future or anything you have done in the past. Just clear and aware in the pure formless awareness, perfect love. Rest in this deep, silent peace, this embrace of love. A couple of minutes of deep silence and know yourself as you really are, as perfect love extends you. Next couple of minutes of deep silence. And if any thoughts arise to disturb this deep peace, to observe them casually, imagine they're like clouds, just drifting by. Have no power to obscure the eternal light. No consequence to them, just exhale and blow them away. It's the breeze of your breath. No nothingness they really are. And you rest for another minute or two of deep silence in Pure Formless Awareness. Perfect love is the blue sky analogy, beyond all thoughts, beyond the cloud patterns, shifting, changing thoughts and emotions of this world. Just rest in this clear awareness. The light of source shine through your mind. Experience the glory that this lesson points to. Accept the truth about yourself. Arise in glory or magnificence and allow the true awareness in you to shine upon the world. So you see the world that true self, the Christ, wants to show you. It's glorious, transcendent reality, aware that it ends the bitter dream of death, aware it is my source's call to me. So hear that call now and just go there. There's nothing else to do, nowhere else to go, nothing else to think about at all. Just be in this pure awareness. Who you really are as the extension of your source. Why? A couple more minutes of deep silence. So just gently coming back from this deep state, and bring some awareness back into the body, to the breath, senses, and the world. And on the count of 3, you're going to open your eyes. So 1, just breathing in, just noticing how the stomach rises and the chest rises. Subtle flow of air in through the nostrils. Just pausing at the top of the inhale. Breathe in again. Just inhaling this awareness of the truth. Remind yourself that you bring the world the message of awakening. What you hear as perfect love, your source speaks to you. And you perceive the world that your true self wants to show you. Where it ends, the bitter dream of death. Where it is, your source's call to you. So, any thoughts, any emotions, perceptions that are still in your mind that are obscuring the deep peace you felt, just let them go one more time as you exhale. Releasing them like dark clouds out of your awareness, blowing them away with the breeze of your breath. Notice how the air flows out of your mouth, chest and the stomach suck back in. The energy subsides back down into the lower stomach and the crown of your head, to the lower stomach and the groin. Count of 2, feel the weight of your body pressing down into the chair and the feet touching the ground. And seeing what you're feeling and touching your hands. Maybe there's a subtle taste in your mouth, a smell in your nose. And just what you're hearing in the surrounding environment. On the count of 3, you're going to open your eyes, look around, remind yourself that Christ, or my true self, sees for me. Christ is my eyes today, says Yeshua. The true self is looking for you at the world and listens only to the voice for perfect love. So you come to your source, this pure formless awareness of perfect love through perceptions of your true self. And true self is the extension of this loving awareness. So as you look around, notice that that awareness is always there. It's ever present in your mind. It's the foundation of your mind. It's your true awareness. Underlies all sense perceptions. It's the same, irrespective of what you're perceiving on the level of form. It doesn't matter. This is Christ's vision. This is enlightened perception, miraculous perception. So to stay rooted in that, just use today's lesson frequently, ideally every hour, even if it's for a few seconds. Just remind yourself of the key idea that now I am as perfect love extends me to reconnect you with this deep presence, this experience. Drop into that for a few moments. And then you continue on your day in a different state of mind. So continuously interrupting the pattern of the ego and going into this true self is the most effective way to undo the ego. And that's why Yeshua recommends we practice in longer practice periods as well as the shorter top-up ones. So help you do that, follow the instructions I've sent you in the text message or email, or if you've got a bit longer, it's a 3-minute breath break, and I'll send you another one this evening, an alternative for this afternoon and evening that you can listen to and top yourself up with this presence. Stay rooted in the magnificence of your true awareness that you really are. So that brings us to the end of the meditation. So
thank you. I'm going to go now.
You want to? You're gonna drop off.
Yeah, I am. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. My pleasure. Thank you for sharing that, and hopefully see you on Sunday. I'll do a session on Sunday evening if you can join. Otherwise Monday.
Yeah. Okie doke. Lovely.
All right.
See you then.
Namaste. Bye, Sally. So I'm just going to read the text reading. So today, this one's called the Ark of Safety. So God asks for nothing. Pure Formless Awareness of perfect love asks for nothing. And his Son, its extension, like it, need ask for nothing. There's no lack in it. There's no lack in the Son, in other words, in an extension. An empty space, a little gap, would be a lack. It is only there that he could want for something he has not. Space where God or perfect love is not, a gap between the Father or Source and the Son or its extension, is not the will of either. It's not in the awareness of either. You have promised to be one. So the Father and the Son, the same awareness. God's promise is a promise to himself. So love's promise is a promise to itself. And there is no one who could be untrue to what it wills as part of what it is. So this awareness is all-encompassing. It is everything, everywhere. It is you. And promise that there is no gap between himself or itself and what it truly is cannot be false. What will can come between what must be one, and in whose oneness there can be no gap. So that paragraph is really just saying there can be no separation between the source and its extension. It's not possible. It is the will of both, or the awareness of both, to be one. So the beautiful relationship you have with all your brothers or companions is a part of you because it is a part of God himself, love itself. Are you not sick if you deny yourself, your wholeness and your health, source of help, call to healing and the call to heal? Your savior or awakener waits for healing, and the world waits with him. Nor are you apart from it. For healing will be one or not at all. It's oneness being where the healing is. What could correct for separation, but its opposite? There is no middle ground in any aspect of salvation, in any aspect of awakening. You accept it wholly or you accept it not at all. What is unseparated must be joined, and what is joined cannot be separate. What he's saying here is you must accept the truth entirely. You are one, you're joined, or you're separate, but you cannot be both. And this is the uncompromising non-dual approach in the Course. And if you deny your oneness, your wholeness, then you cannot hear the source of help. You cannot hear the truth. And so the relationship you have with all your brothers, companions, is part of you because it's the same awareness. There's only one awareness. They are that awareness, you are that awareness, your source is that awareness. There's only one awareness that's indivisible. Either there is a gap between you and your brother, you and your companion, or you are one. You are as one. There is no in between, no other choice, and no allegiance to be split between the two. Split allegiance is but faithlessness to both. It merely sets you spinning around to grasp uncertainly at any straw that seems to hold some promise of relief. Yet who can build his home upon a straw and count on it as shelter from the wind? The body can be made a home like this because it lacks foundation in the truth. And yet, because it does, can be seen as not your home, but merely as an aid to help you reach the home where God abides, where love, perfect, pure formless awareness, perfect love abides. So we cannot have a split allegiance. We cannot be separate and one at the same time, looking for some kind of relief in this world, some promise of relief. Uncertain, grasping, uncertain at any straw. Who can build his home upon a straw and count on it as shelter? So he's saying the body and its thought system, the ego's thought system, is not your home. It has no foundation in the truth because it's based on the idea of separation. So we can let it go and store our mind to the truth of who we really are, which is our home in God, in the pure formless awareness of perfect love as our true home, our true state of mind. So with this as purpose, is the body healed? If we have only the purpose of attaining the state of mind of pure formless awareness of perfect love, then the body will be healed because it is not used to witness to the dream of separation and disease. It's interesting, disease is, you split that, it's disease. All disease in the body comes from disease in the mind. In other words, a denial of your source. Nor is it idly blamed for what it did not do. It serves to help the healing of God's Son or love's extension, and for this purpose it cannot be sick. It will not join a purpose not your own, and you have chosen that it not be sick. All miracles are based upon this choice and given you the instant it is made. The moment you make the choice not to be sick, not to entertain illusions, then no forms of sickness are immune from this miraculous power because the choice cannot be made in terms of form. Choice of sickness seems to be a form, yet it is one as is its opposite, and you are sick or well accordingly, but never you alone. So we choose sickness, doesn't matter what the form of sickness is. It's a choice based on a thought of separation. So that thought is one as is its opposite. It's one thought system. And depending on which you choose, you're sick or well accordingly. But never you alone, says Yeshua. You're never healed or sick alone, because this world is but the dream that you can be alone and think without affecting those apart from you. To be alone must mean you are apart. And if you are, you cannot but be sick. So you can only be sick if you are apart. Sickness and separation go hand in glove, as do oneness and healing. This seems to prove that you must be apart, yet What it means is that you try to keep a promise to be true to faithlessness, true to the faithless belief in separation. Faithlessness is sickness. It's like the house set upon straw. It seems to be quite solid and substantial in itself, yet its stability cannot be judged apart from its foundation. If it rests on straw, there is no need to bar the door and lock the windows and make fast the bolts. The wind will topple it, and rain will come and carry it into oblivion. So he's referencing to the parable of the house built on a rock and the house built on sand in the Bible, where he says, parable of rock and sand. He said, everyone who hears his word puts them into practice. It's like a wise man who built his house on the rock. He went on to say, everyone who hears his words and does not put them into practice, like a foolish man who built his house on sand. So building on the sand is easier than building on the rock. It costs less, it's faster, but when the storms of life come, so the rain comes and the winds come, storms of life, then the house built on the sand cannot sustain and it will be blown away, as he says here. But the house built on the truth, the rock of truth, will remain. So what is the sense in seeking to be safe in what was made for danger and for fear? So why would you try in this house built on straw to lock the doors and secure it when the whole construct is made to make the idea of danger and fear real? Why burden it with further locks and chains and heavy anchors when its weakness lies not in itself, but in the frailty of the little gap of nothingness whereon it stands? What can be safe that rests upon a shadow? Would you build your home upon what will collapse beneath a feather's weight? What can be safe that rests upon a shadow? Would you build your home upon what will collapse beneath a feather's weight? So saying, analogy of the ego, belief in separation, as straw is a nice one. And when you build a house on straw, it's just going to collapse. It has no substance, it has no foundation. So all of your defenses, the locks and the chains and the heavy anchors, which we believe in, which are going to make us safe in this world, are nothing. They will not keep us safe within the construct of the illusion of sickness and death. So he's saying, let it all go. Choose only oneness. Unequivocally, you cannot choose sickness and health at the same time. You must choose one or the other. Sickness comes from the belief in separation. Health comes from the belief in oneness. So choose which foundation you want in your life, which altar you want to worship, which foundation you give value in your life, in other words. And then your home is built on the truth if you choose correctly. It's built upon your brother's health, companion's health, upon his happiness, his sinlessness, his innocence, and everything his father or source promised him. No secret promise you have made instead has shaken the foundation of his home. The winds will blow upon it and the rain will beat against it, but with no effect. The world will wash away, and yet this house will stand forever, for its strength lies not within itself alone. It is an ark of safety, resting on God's promise, love's promise, that his son, its extension, is safe forever. Translate that as free forever in himself, itself. So perfect love, pure formless awareness of perfect love promises that its extension is free forever in itself, in that awareness. What gap can interpose itself between the safety of this shelter and its source? From here, the body can be seen as what it is, neither less nor more in worth, and the extent to which it can be used to liberate God's Son or love's extension unto his home. So the only purpose of the body is to use it to free our minds from the enslavement into the body in this world. And with this holy purpose, this holy aware purpose, is it made a home of holiness, a home of pure formless awareness is holiness, a home of pure formless awareness, a little while, because it shares your Father's will or your sources of awareness with you. It shares the pure formless awareness of perfect love with you. So what is this saying in a nutshell? To summarize, it's saying that there is no hope, there is no salvation, no safety in building your house on foundation of separation. It's like building your house on straw. And it doesn't matter how much you try and secure that house, it's going to fail you. So build your house on the rock of truth, on the truth of oneness, of the Father, the Source, and its Son or extension. And that all of your brothers, your companions join you in that. And on that security, that's the only source of these in this world. And then the body will simply be a means to awaken the mind to this transcendent truth of who it really is. And so temporarily you will have a home of holiness, of pure formless awareness in this world. You remain in the body for a while, but you're rooted in the pure formless awareness of perfect love that is the truth of who you are. Because it shares your source's will with you. And on that note, I think let's end the session. So thank you for listening, and practice today's lesson, which is very synchronistic with the text well today, saying the same thing really, that the Father and the Son are one, and that the true self, your true self, or your Christ self, will see for you and perceive for you to bring the pure formless awareness, perfect love into your experience, moment by moment. So that brings us to the end of the session. Thank you for joining. And namaste, which means the divine self in me acknowledges and honors that same self in you.